यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जय राधा माधव राधे जय राधा गिरिधारी राधे जय जगन्नाथ जय बलदेव जय सुभद्रा जय जगन्नाथ जय गौरनिताय जय गौरनिताय जय जय प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद प्रभुपाद जय जय प्रभुपाद नित्य गौर हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल राधा माधव की जय राधा गिरिधारी की all glories to the assembled devotees all glories to the assembled devotees all glories to the assembled devotees all glories to Guru and Lord and God. Hare Krishna everyone, thank you so much for coming. It's been just really ecstatic to be in Auckland. This morning I went and I toured the whole temple, around the temple. It's just such a beautiful place. I mean, such a beautiful temple, and the surroundings. It's unbelievable, really. You know, and the deities are so beautiful, and the devotees as well. So thank you for your attendance. I just I just want to, before I begin, I want to thank my host, Parjanya Prabhu and Ananglata Mataji, for their hospitality. They've really gone out of their way to, accommodate me here and given me so much, attention, and taken care of all my food needs and everything. I just want to thank them from the bottom of my heart. And little Devar, he's such a joy to have. Thank you. So today I will speak on a verse from the Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam. It's going to be the fifth canto, fifth chapter, 18th verse. Very popular verse. And you may already know it. If you don't, then you can pull it out on your phones, because I'll read a verse and perhaps some of you would like to also read the verse. Because this verse is very nice to connect with our parenting values. And so I chose this verse precisely because of that. 5:5:18. Guru na sasyat, sajano na sasyat. Pita na sasyat, janani na sasyat. Devam na tasyan, na patischa sasyan. Namo chayedya samupeta mrityam. Anybody would like to repeat? Guru na sasya, swajano na sasya. Pita na sasya, janani na sasya. Devam na tasya. Anybody else? Yeah. Anybody else? Thank you. So translation. One who cannot deliver his dependents from the path of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a father, a husband, a mother, nor a worshipable demigod. So you can please try to repeat. One who cannot deliver his dependents from the path of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a father, a husband, a mother, or a worshipable demigod. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai. There are many spiritual masters, but Rishabh Dev advises that one should not become a spiritual master if he is unable to save his disciple from the path of birth and death. Unless one is a pure devotee of Krishna, he cannot save himself from the path of repeated birth and death. Tyaktva deham punarjanma neti mam eti so Arjuna. One can stop birth and death only by returning home, back to Godhead. However, who can go back to Godhead unless he understands the Supreme Lord in truth? Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tatpata. We have many instances in history illustrating Rishabdev's instructions. Sukracharya was rejected by Bali Maharaj due to his inability to save Bali Maharaj from the path of repeated birth and death. Shukracharya was not a pure devotee. He was more or less inclined to fruitive activity, and he objected when Bali Maharaj promised to give everything to Lord Vishnu. Actually, one is supposed to give everything to the Lord, because everything belongs to the Lord. Consequently, the Supreme Lord advises in Bhagavad Gita 9:27, Yat karoshi, yad ashnashi, yad yohosi dadasi, yat tapasvasi, kaunteya, tat purushushva mad arpanam. O son of Kunti, all that you do, all that you eat, all that you offer and give away, as well as all austerities that you may perform, should be done as an offering unto me. This is bhakti. Unless one is devoted, he cannot give everything to the Supreme Lord. Unless one Unless one can do so, he cannot become a spiritual master, husband, father, or mother. Similarly, the wives of the Brahmanas who were performing sacrifices gave up their relatives just to satisfy Krishna. This is an example of a wife rejecting her husband who cannot deliver her from the impending dangers of birth and death. Similarly, Prahlad Maharaj rejected his father and Bharat Maharaj rejected his mother, Janani Nasasyat. The word Devam indicates a demigod or one who accepts worship from a dependent. Ordinarily, the spiritual master, husband, father, mother, or superior relative accepts worship from an inferior relative. But here Rishabdev forbids this. First, the father, spiritual master, or husband must be able to release the dependent from repeated birth and death. If he cannot do this, he plunges himself into the ocean of reproachment for his unlawful activities. Everyone should be very responsible and take charge of his dependents, just as a spiritual master takes charge of his disciple, or a father takes charge of his son. All these responsibilities cannot be discharged honestly unless one can save the dependent from repeated birth and death. Om Agyantimandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Hare Krishna. I'm sure you've heard this verse spoken by devotees in classes. It's a very famous verse, and so Rishabdev was preaching to his 100th son, and the oldest was the first one was who? Anybody know? Bharat. Huh? He was the oldest one, and so and not all of them entered Grihastha life. So he's speaking to his sons who are not in Grihastha life also, which means that it's for everyone who gives shelter to someone. And you see how in life, in material life, we see everybody is giving shelter to somebody, isn't it? Like, the husband may be giving shelter to the, wife. The wife is giving shelter to, the children, or whichever way you want to see. Everybody is giving shelter. Huh? I mean, if you don't have anybody, you may be giving a shelter to a pet dog or something, right? We're all giving shelter to someone. It really applies to anybody who's in that position of giving shelter or accepting worship. In other words, respect, worship, right? So it behooves them to. So what is their duty here? Bishop did say they must take the responsibility of delivering that person from this ocean of birth and death. That's how serious it is. And of course, mainly talks about the guru disciple, right? But here we're going to talk about mainly about parenting, the duty of the parent, right? And not till I read this verse till I realized, my God, this is pretty, serious, like, our responsibility. Of course, it means that what it really means is a commitment to devotional service. We may not be completely qualified to take our dependents, our children back to Godhead in this life, right? it may not happen like that, because we are also not, we are on the path of perfection, but we're not perfect, right? But at least what it means is the commitment to devotional service, because that is the process to take them back to Godhead. That is the process of for us to go back to Godhead. So it's kind of emphasizing that how important it is to actually practice devotional service, to actually practice bhakti yoga, right? And it pretty much includes everybody, right? Even mothers, and fathers, right? And even demigods. In other words, even the demigods cannot accept worship, right? People go to temples, demigod temples, asking for so many things, but actually they have a responsibility to actually lead these worshippers to Krishna, so that they can get out of this material birth and death, right? So even they have that responsibility. So we cannot even aspire to become a demigod without taking that responsibility, isn't it? Yeah. And it's saying that how serious this responsibility is, right? And how, if this responsibility is not carried out, then scripturally it's okay to reject that person, right? So it just shows how serious it is. That, I mean, according to Vedic culture, the wife never rejects the husband. It's like this is, this is one of the first things they talk about, right? Chastity and all that. But here they're giving an example of how a wife can reject a husband, which is totally against the Vedic principles, right? Which means how serious this responsibility is when we accept, worship, when we have dependence, how important it is to try to take them back to Godhead, right? At least to be in the process, to be aware, right? To be aware of this responsibility. And then, of course, they give so many examples. Like Narad Muni, he delivered so many, just a few, just to name a few that we're all familiar with, right? Dhruva, Prahlad, who else? Migrari, so many people, right? Valmiki also, I think, who's the one who wrote Ramayana, right? He also, right? And then Suniti, the mother of Dhruva, she delivered a son, right? So there's many wonderful examples. Of course, there's Kashyapa Muni, who delivered his wife Aditi, and then Kharda Muni delivered his wife Devahuti. So we have some very wonderful examples of that. So how can we fulfill this role? Like I said, we can't guarantee, but at least we're on that path, right? How do we do that? And one of them is commitment to sound vibration, to pure sound vibration. If in the home there's constantly the pure sound vibration, that is a way to help our dependence, right? So there has to be a lot of that. And of course, we talked about this yesterday, how we can do that in the home, right? The morning program, and, always, avoiding some things, doing things like the morning program, eating prasadam, good association. We talked all about. So that's all the, sound vibration. And we hear about Prahlad, he was and this sound vibration can be it begins very early, even before we conceive, right? It begins very, very early. And we see the example of Prahlad. He was not able to do any devotional service when he was living with his father, right? But where was his devotional service? It was within the womb of his mother. And it was so powerful. The process of hearing was so powerful that changed his heart, that purified his heart, and he became a pure devotee. So commitment to pure sound vibration. And then our own example is so very important. In other words, we cannot give something that we don't possess. So that means our own commitment to devotional service, our own commitment to following the four relative principles, chanting around. Because we can only inspire others when we are inspired ourselves. This is a fact, isn't it? We cannot give something that we don't have. So that's also very important, right? And then a committed is not only just how we deal with our children, but it's also how do we deal with each other. The relationship between husband and wife is very, very important, because then the children get a sense of security and confidence. And they learn, okay, and they understand, okay, this is how you do it, right? Because there can be no following, there can be no obedience without without, until the child sees this committed relationship, this loving relationship between husband and wife. Is very, is for a child, is he cannot understand, he's not able to follow or the instructions until he sees that, right? So that's also very important. For example, if you go to a temple and there's a devotee and there's a new person coming in, and a devotee gets up and starts talking very nicely to that person, and then another devotee comes and talks very nicely, very well, and sweetly to that new person. And then after a little while, the new devotee sees that both of them are fighting like cat and dog. How is he going to feel? He's going to think like, I don't want to be part of this organization, better, I'm better off somewhere with my own thing, He won't want to be part of that, institute, because he sees that, oh, they were talking to me nicely, but look at the way they're fighting with each other, right? So and he checks out, right? Except the child cannot check out. He's stuck there. So that's also very important, that how we can, and that takes, if you want to shape the life of a child, that relationship, that strong relationship must exist between husband and wife. Of course, that doesn't mean there's no disagreement, right? Disagreement is compared, between husband and wife is compared to like, forest fire, right? When there's, or wind, when there's strong wind, there's two bamboos that, they collide with each other, and there's a big boom sound. And nobody cares, because they know it's the bamboos, colliding with each other. So when there's a disagreement, the child, it doesn't get affected, as long as the disagreement is solved in a nice way, away, in a separately, right? So these three things are very important in the upbringing of a child, right? So this is very nice. So anyway, so here Rishabh Dev is talking about how serious this responsibility is, and how people who do these responsibilities, they are free from the reproachment of karmic situations, right? In others, they don't get this heavy karma. And you see examples in scriptures of people who are not able to deliver not able to train and give the right instruction to their children. There's many examples like that, right? And you contrast with them with those that do give good instruction to their children, right? For example, the example of Dhritarashtra, right? His son. Dhritarashtra was actually not that evil. But what was his problem? His weakness for his son, right? The skin weakness, right? So in other words, he could not rise above that. And because of that, what kind of destiny he had, right? Same thing with Gandhari. Now, she was not in favor of Duryodhan acting like that. In fact, she went and complained. At a certain point, when Draupadi was being mistreated, she was so upset when she heard Draupadi screaming, then she ran out to see what was going on. And even though she had blindfolded, she could understand that Draupadi was in trouble. And she was so upset, she went to Dhritarashtra and said, I want you to give him up. I want you to get rid of him. And Dhritarashtra asked, really? Who are you talking about? He couldn't believe it. And she said, I'm talking about Duryodhan, our son. And he said, what? You're asking me to get rid of Duryodhan? I'm sorry, I can't. I'm too weak. In other words, the Gandhari also realized, right, that this was not right. And she would always tell Duryodhan that actually, I cannot support you because you're against dharma. She was a dharmic lady, right? Very dharmic. In fact, she was so dharmic that it said that there was never in a time that she did not practice dharma, that she did not follow dharma. Yeah? For example, if you're going in a traffic and nobody's looking around, you just kind of, maybe you go through or something, you do something that you shouldn't be doing, right? In her mind also, she would not do anything adharmic. That's how dharmic she was. But there was two things that she did, which was a huge mistake on her part. And one was her envy of Kunti. And what was that? That when she had Duryodhan, I mean the 100 children in her womb for like 2 years, and she did not give birth. And then she heard that Kunti gave birth to Yudhishthira, right? And she was so upset, and some, just envy came into her heart, right? And then she took her fist and she, really hit her womb really hard. And what happened is she gave birth to a lump of flesh. And as predicted, and Vyasa knew there was a prediction that she should have 100 children. So he came and he cut it up, and there were children who were alive, 100 of them, And even at that time, when she had those 100 children, Vyasadeva came and said, if you don't want to get rid of all of them, get rid of the first one. Later on, Vidur came. So many people advised him. Why? Because it was a very big responsibility, carrying the kingdom, right? Because during that time, the lineage used to be so pure that it wasn't something like, okay, by birth, you just get to rule as a child, as a son, as a firstborn son. No, the lineage, they were trained so well. The lineage was so pure. The Kshatriya blood was so pure that automatically they were qualified. They raised that child in such a way. Right? When Parikshit Maharaj was born, there were a lot of astrology. People were saying different kind of wonderful things about the future of this person, right? And of course, Parikshit Maharaj was so amazing, a pure devotee, and also very qualified in ruling, right? And everybody was predicting, the astrologer was predicting all kinds of things, wonderful things. And Yudhishthira Maharaj's concern was, is he going to follow his ancestor? That was his big concern. Why? Because in following, there's so much of greatness in following. When you follow authority, you actually imbibe all the wonderful qualities. All the great Vaishnava qualities one imbibes when one learns how to follow higher authority. And this is what is quickly disappearing in society, right? At least in America, I mean, you go, when you go to pick up your child or something, or in college, you see, when sometimes parents come and pick up their children, you see how they relate to their parents, right? They say, and you hear statements like, oh, shut up, dad, and stuff like that, right? So because people are, when I went to Prague, then one of the first things the temple president told me is that, here the culture is the children and parents, they treat each other equally. And please be aware of that. So this is the culture all over the world, not just in America, right? It's like, and actually Shastra teaches all the qualities are in following. And that's why as devotees, we are taught that, right? We take a spiritual master, we learn to follow his instructions. It's all about following, right? Once my younger son, Gopal Hari, he was traveling a very long distance, it was many, many hours. So he thought, okay, let me see what's going on. He turned on the TV, and you won't believe, for 40 minutes, there was a show there. And it was all about how stupid your parents are. Seriously. And he talks about that. For 40 minutes, the show was all about how stupid your parents are. Now, I mean, he opened that thing just once, just at that moment, right? He didn't grow up just watching TV, But imagine, and it had such an impact on him. The most revered members of our society, they're being, ridiculed. Now, a child grows up learning that, and all the time, what do you think the result will be? And like I was saying yesterday, so many different authorities, and that's why it's so hard for children even to learn these things, learn even to respect their own parents at home. Very difficult in this time and age. And the only way it can be done is through, the process that Srila Prabhupada gave us. It's so wonderful. Within ISKCON society, the revered member, people who are senior and everything are given so much respect, right? You don't get that anywhere. Most old people are neglected. They have places They reject it pretty much. I mean, they prefer actually. I've talked to so many, they actually don't mind being, separated because they think the children are too much for them. They cannot handle the children. So they prefer. So anyway, so this is a, so Gandhari and Dhritarashtra, because they did not do their duty of giving good training to their children, like Rishabdev here is saying, of raising them to, in a way that can give this kind of training, that can deliver them from birth and death. What was their destiny? They went through so much suffering, right? Especially Gandhari's suffering was very tragic because she was such a dharmic lady, right? But her problem was, like I said, two problems. She was envious of Kunti, and also she cursed Krishna. She actually, towards the end, I don't know if you know that from the Mahabharata, she actually cursed Krishna. Because when she heard that all 100 sons were killed by the Pandavas, she was very upset. And the culture, I mean, imagine this kind of culture that existed during that time. After the war, Krishna brought all the 4 Pandavas in front of Gandhari. And they had the courage. I mean, and why did he bring them? To ask for forgiveness. In other words, imagine all the things that Pandavas did to them. I mean, the Kauravas did to them. Yet, it was necessary for them to ask for forgiveness. And because Gandhari was because she was so chaste, she had gained a lot of power. So, and they were all afraid of her. Actually, Arjuna was hiding behind Krishna. And first, I think Bhima came in front, and Gandhari asked him that, why did you kill my son? Because he really, I mean, he was fearsome. He really killed. And people, and to an external eye, it would seem so cruelly, right? But actually, it was very merciful, isn't it? When a devotee also kills, it's also merciful. When Krishna kills, it's merciful, right? When a devotee kills, it's merciful. So Bhima, she said, why did you kill him? And Bhima said, well, your son is much more powerful than me. Something, he praised Duryodhana, and so she was pacified. And then Yudhishthir came, and he said, I'm the culprit. You can do whatever you want to. You can curse me. And she was shocked. In other words, she wanted to curse the Pandavas, and Vyasadeva came and reminded him. He said, remember, you never supported Duryodhana in his nefarious activities. Why are you doing this? You know the Pandavas are clean, they are pure. In this way, Gandhari, of course, the reason why Gandhari suffered so much, in spite of all that, is because when she realized, she asked Vyasadeva to open her bandage because she wanted to go to the battleground and see all her children. And that was one of the biggest mistakes she did. Because first of all, if you artificially blindfold yourself, you'll be always curious to see what's going on. At a certain point, you'll want to open it and see, right? So that was a chance. She opened a bandage and she saw all her children dead, slaughtered, right over there. And she became so upset, besides herself, in grief, that she asked Krishna, why did you do this? And she cursed Krishna. He said, eternity will see that you allowed this to happen. Whatever. In other words, she blamed him. And this is what happens, right? People blame God when they don't get what they want to, without doing any service for them, without showing any love for him or any understanding for God. They find fault with him. So she was finding fault with him. So her devotion was more on the basis of mundane religiosity. It wasn't based on pure love, service to Krishna. Unlike Draupadi. Draupadi had also a very close relationship with Krishna. She had a close. Gandhari did not have a close relationship with Krishna, right? And so at that point, she curses Krishna that in 36 years or something, your Yadu clan will be finished, right? And also you will be shot with an arrow. And Krishna smiled. And Krishna told her very straightforwardly, actually you get good or bad children according to your samskar. I have nothing to do with it, Krishna said. In other words, we get our children according to our past actions, our karma, what we deserve. If the children don't come out right, that could be not because of you, it could be just some, past things, past karmas, right? In this way, he said, it's because if people get good children, it's because of our past. So what we have to do is, in other words, instead of feeling the controllership, that these are my children, like Dhritarashtra felt, Dhritarashtra has this bodily attachment. It was not based on the soul. It was not based on the point that these are spirit souls and they have been given to us to take care of. This is how a devotee parent should think. No, we didn't decide that we're going to get these children in our family. Did we decide, I want this particular child to come into my home? No. We were totally helpless. Material nature decided, Krishna decided that these are the children I'm going to get, right? So in this way, it's not up to us. So that means our whole mood should be not of controllership or proprietorship. Hey kid, you do what I tell you, but rather it should be more on the level of seeing them as spirit souls and then doing whatever is needed in order to connect that soul in its journey back to Godhead. This journey has been interrupted, right? In the third canto, it talks about the child in the womb, right? How the kind of suffering it goes through. Like really an eye opener, right? Kapil Muni describes to his mother. Right? The child is not comfortable at all. It's really cramped up for 9 months and in a lot of pain. Imagine being arched like that for 9 months, no place to move, and being bitten by worms. And whatever the mother eats is going to affect that child. In a very, very difficult situation. And at that time, the soul prays to the Lord and asks the Lord to please get me out of here. I promise you, I'm never going to forget you. Very earnestly, the child prays, right? But what happens is when he's born, due to the force of, the impact of, coming out of the womb, the child forgets everything. And being smothered by the love of the parents and everything, which is very natural, right? He forgets all his promise. And really, that's not the child's fault. Then it becomes the duty of the parent to help him remember and to connect him. You see why it's so crucial to connect the child to Krishna. It's an interrupted journey, and we are trying to make that flow again. And according to Bhagavad Gita, 6th chapter, right, it's described that what happens to yogis who do a little bit of devotional service and what happens to yogis who do a lot of long time devotional service, right? So sometimes we are not able to give everything, right, in this life. What is the destiny of such a person? And it's described that first of all, he goes up. Imagine how kind Krishna is. You do a little bit of devotional service and you can ascend up there. You go to the heavenly planets and the lifespan is much longer. You spend hundreds of years there. Enjoy is mostly enjoyment, right? There's very little suffering. And then you come back and then you take birth. That person takes birth in a aristocratic family, a rich aristocratic person. Why? Because the facilities are already there. And then you can just proceed and continue in your devotional journey. But that doesn't mean this is always going to be, a good journey, because one can get mesmerized by all the opulence and go into the wrong path. So that's the destiny of somebody who's done a little bit of devotional service. But a child who's done a lot of devotional service he takes birth in a family of Prabhupada, right? In a family of transcendentalists. And that's all of you. You see? A family of devotees. Why? Because the child grows up chanting the holy name and hearing the holy name from day one. Of course, we can see those other great families, the Acharya families, right? The family in which Prabhupada was born. I mean, his father was such a great devotee of the Lord, right? So in other words, our children are taking birth in the family of transcendentalists, which is such a rare birth, such a rare birth. And that's after long practice. So these children have done some long practice. We don't know, right? I know one child, he was really tiny, and one day he suddenly started crying and said, he said, I want to go. I don't know what exactly what it was, but he wanted to go in the car with Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada had these shoes on. And then he was just like I don't know, a year old or something, or 2 years old. Obviously, he had a past life with Srila Prabhupada, and he was crying because he wanted to go with Prabhupada. And then later on, as time went, he forgot all about that. In other words, you do remember your past for a few years. It's said that you remember your past life for a few years, and then forgetfulness comes. You don't remember anything. Now he doesn't remember saying that at all. Of course, he's being well trained by his mother to continue that journey, You see, so these children are not ordinary children, what I'm saying. And if you don't actually connect them, make that connection with Krishna again, it's really a very big loss. It's a very big disservice. And that's what Rishabh Dev is saying, okay? And obviously, because they're born in our families means that they are, they've done a long time service, devotional service. It's not like anything small, right? So we see that how important this is, right? That's why Rishabh Dev is making that point, how important this is. So there's many other things we can talk about that, but I want to make sure if anybody has any questions or comments, you can ask at this point. I'm trying to think if I had anything. I could tell you a really nice, a story from the Krishna book about, the story of Vatsasur, the demon Vatsasur. Do you remember that in what form he came to try to kill Krishna? Anybody knows? Huh? Cat. Yeah, exactly. So the story goes of how, and this is related to parenting. This Leela can be related to parenting, okay? Because, this, there's the spiritual world up there, Goloka, right? And there's, there are certain things that don't take place in that world, but which will take place in Bhauma Vrindavan, which means the Vrindavan within this material world. The Vrindavan that you can go to, right? That's called Bhauma Vrindavan. For example, in this Goloka, there's no demons, okay? But here we have occasional demons coming, right? And that's the demons. Krishna was killing 3 or 4 demons a day, And it's said that the reason why we want to hear these stories of demons is because our own anarthas are clean, are taken care of, right? Like Kalia, he was full of envy and malice. It takes care of our own envy and malice. Right? It said when Krishna swallowed the fire, then it takes care of the quarrel among devotees. Krishna, when you hear that, then that tendency to quarrel among devotees is taken away. You become purified of that. So in this way, there's many leelas like that. And so Vatsasur is one leela also, which was which it represents the boyhood part, which is full of mischievousness, right? So here we see that how Vatsasur, the way it happened. First of all, let's get into the the day. It happened the day Krishna decided to take the cows for grazing. He would take the little calves, not the bigger cows, because he was only 3 years old. Actually, children were allowed to take only at the age of 5. But Krishna was given the exception because he was just so good at it. And everybody brought gifts to give to Krishna. All the gopis brought. And Mother Yashoda also brought some gifts. Huh? And what were the gifts that she brought? Was an umbrella for Krishna and shoes. And these were very cute little shoes. You know, like if you go to Rajasthan, you'll find shoes that have mirrors in it. But except this had jewels on it, Krishna's shoes. So she brought them. And why did she bring them? Because Krishna is going in the hot sun. He needs an umbrella. And also there's so many rocks. He needs shoes. And Krishna took all the gifts that were given to him. Buffalo horn, took all the cows and calves. But he did not accept Mother Yashoda's gift. He said that if you want to give me these gifts, you must also give shoes and 4 shoes for each of my cows and an umbrella with a cowherd boy who can hold the umbrella for them. Because you know, cows are so dear to us. I cannot accept this while my cows don't have it. And obviously there was 900,000 cows. So that day Krishna went without the shoes and the umbrella. And that was the day when they, of course, they first go and play and the cows just follow Krishna while the cowherd boys just play the different things, you know, slingshots and simple things like village boys would play, right? And he went, and then that was the day when Kansa sent Bakasur. And Kansa was so frustrated because he couldn't kill Krishna. And so he actually consulted his friends, his followers, and said, what should I do? What do you think? What do you think Krishna loves the most? And somebody said, I think Krishna loves the cows the most. And so he calls Vatsasur, who's actually, he's a demon. Huh? And then he changes his body into a calf, and everybody treats him like a little child because he's baby calf, he's calf. And so he comes and everybody, and then Kansa tells him, you know, go to this village in Nanda's village, and you see this little boy, this blue boy, and you go and kill him, you know, trick him because Krishna loves cows. You just mix yourself in the herd. And actually, this demon was actually the son of a big demon, Mura, and one time he defeated, you know, he defeated all the demons, and he went into this ashram of Vashishta Muni, and he saw this beautiful little cow, Nandini, and he desired to have that cow. So he changed his body into a Brahman and begged the cow from this Vashishta Muni. And Nandini could understand what he's doing, and she got very upset. And she says, I curse you to become a calf because you're stealing, you're disguising yourself as a Brahman. So that's how he became a calf, actually. And then he became very scared and he circumambulated them and he says, please forgive me. He says, well, one day in Dwapar Yuga, you're going to mix in the herd and then you will be Krishna's herd and you will be liberated. That's how he became a calf, actually. Okay, so here he becomes and he mixes himself and Krishna is doing his pastimes and Krishna tells Balaram, hey Balaram, do you recognize this calf? It wasn't there in the morning. And Balaram said, I think he's a demon. And Krishna said, oh, then we should get rid of him. And Balaram said, no, don't do it. People will blame you for killing a cow. And so he said, no. When he is killed, he'll change his body and he'll become he'll look like a demon, then people will know. They won't blame him. Anyway, and so Krishna goes up to him and takes his hind leg, twirls him around really hard, throws him into the kapitha tree, which is a fruit. It's a very delicious fruit. And then he throws him up in the tree and all the delicious fruits, they fall down. So he did 2 things. He killed and then they all got to eat delicious food. Now, every time Krishna would kill a demon, that's when they would remember that they need to eat. The boys would be so busy playing that they would forget to eat. And the mothers would pack all these wonderful lunches and they would forget to eat. And every time Krishna would kill a demon, they would remember. They would sit down and eat. It was really sweet. And this Krishna would do like 2 or 3 times in one day. That many demons Kansa was sending, and one after another. So this was a very sweet fasting. Anyway, so here Vatsasura is in relationship to the killing of Vatsasura. Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati have written amazing papers analyzing this this Leela in relationship with how one should parent, how one should protect their children from this anartha that Vatsasur is representing. You see how we read about demons being killed to purify ourselves from that anartha, right? So obviously, when Krishna kills kills Vatsasur, then there's meant to purify something, right? It's meant to teach us something, right? So they've written this. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has written this wonderful. It's just in a few points. I'm going to summarize. Okay, it's a huge paper, and you know the way Bhaktisiddhanta's writings are. You need a dictionary, and it's very difficult to understand. So it's been summarized like in very few points that I'm going to give, which is very, very relevant to parenting. Very relevant. Okay. Let me bring that out. And then we'll finish after that. Okay. So the first point, okay. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Vatsasur maintained a childish, mischievous mentality by which he developed desires for sense gratification and materialism. Vatsasur represents the evils that is present during boyhood, totally susceptible to bad association. It means it's very natural for children at that age to seek bad association. Okay, so so the first point he says is, first of all, is that children have a natural tendency to play, and there are people who think that they shouldn't play. They feel that children should not be allowed to play, and he doesn't agree with that. Okay, and then he's talking about this group of people called Puritans that came to the USA that had this philosophy, by the way, and so he was against that. Okay, the next point he says that you can't tell children, children are not just going to obey if you say, don't do this, don't do that, and don't do this or that. It's the only time that they're going to stop doing something is by the association of Krishna. In other words, a transcendental solution. Then he says that it is impossible. I mean, this is the Acharya speaking, okay? He's saying that it is impossible to maintain innocence in boys or girls and keep them away from bad association except through service to Krishna. They have a right to be joyful, but at the same time, take shelter of Krishna, like the cowherd boys in Vrindavan. Then the third thing he says is that it's a rotten arrangement by which one thinks that by curbing sensuous tendencies in their childhood, one can save them as adults so that they will be responsible enjoyers in their adulthood. In other words, sometimes we see how parents will keep them within limits, like they'll keep them safe from all the sensuous things just so they can enjoy later. They think then it's okay. Once you, become grahas, it's okay to act in whatever way you want to without responsibility, right? So he admonishes parenting with that kind of idea. Okay. Another idea that's prevalent nowadays, he says, is that strictness can be applied to them by becoming very strong in mind and intellect, becoming a scientist and researcher so that they can control big material nature. That also has to be rejected. Becoming a big scientist so that you can control. And he's like so clear, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati is so clear about what is the goal for anybody in life, an adult or child. Then he says that he was very strong about the purpose of life, right? And what he said, that morality is not the purpose of life. What is the purpose of life? Is to guide the soul for the higher purpose and not only just to be a good person. Higher purpose means, taking care of the soul, right? What is the soul's duty towards Krishna, right? And then he says that, and what is the purpose? In other words, he talks about the service to Krishna, the Parodharma is the highest purpose. And why? Because if you don't do that, if you don't connect children to Krishna, then you're robbing the child of its opportunity to go back to Godhead. That's a huge responsibility. And that's what Rishabh Dev is talking about, right? So for that, one has to be qualified themselves in order to take our children back. So he talked about the qualifications of the parents, because we are taking care of dependents, we're taking shelter for us. Then he says, juvenile innocence can be enjoyed by giving this protection. Sometimes we know childhood is a time, it's a sweet time where you want to enjoy where you want them to enjoy their childhood, right? There's so much happiness, and that's totally okay and totally natural. But it should be properly desired for the service of Krishna. Then he says that parent has no higher duty than to employ their boyhood in the service of Krishna by putting him under the guidance of people who are more advanced. We talked about that yesterday. And the last point is that childhood naughtiness can be encouraged. However, this overlooks the fact that training must be there for the soul and not from the juvenile perspective of material sense enjoyment. In other words, there must be training for the soul and not just taking care of the body, right? So the training is to the soul, not to the body or mind. And this training is the same for an adult or a child. So he's saying that the soul has a tendency, any soul has a tendency for material and sensuous enjoyment. But if it is employed in the service of Krishna, then one can be purified. Then he talks, the last point he talks about is how Kansa employed Vatsasur, right? To go and kill Krishna. He employed him, right? So he says the same way modern education has employed teachers who are inimical to the service of Krishna, and they may even try to stop them, but no one can. Krishna will give protection to the innocent child, and the child should be taught to take shelter of Krishna. Now, how a child takes shelter of Krishna is different from how adults take shelter of Krishna, right? That is okay, right? But the essence is that Krishna will give protection to that child. In other words, you have this wonderful school, so they're protected, right? But what if a parent sends the children to an outside school in places where they don't have devotee school, right? So it's an assurance to them that if your child has an identity as a devotee and keeps that identity, Krishna will protect. There's nothing to worry. Krishna himself will come and protect. And you saw that in the case of Prahlad Maharaj, right? When he went to the demon school with Chanda and Amarka, they were ready to really beat him up because he wouldn't listen to them, right? But Krishna at every step, he saved him, right? Prahlad, and he also saved Prahlad with his own father, who was ready to kill him. So Krishna personally came to save that child. He took this incarnation. This is very rare incarnation where Krishna is taking this form, an incarnation, just to save one person, Prahlad. Very unique pastime. So this is something that you can meditate on and think about in terms of the importance of engaging our children in Krishna consciousness. So when you go to this Hare Krishna school and they're teaching Shastras or they're teaching devotional things, don't think it's wasting time. Don't think that the academics are being missed out. Because that is so very important. Okay. It's so very important. Like I was saying yesterday, that is the foundation. And if the foundation is missing, everything will topple down. Nothing will last. It's very temporary. You may be giving everything else, but how temporary it is. Right? The life is temporary, right? But you're taking care of the eternal. So this foundation is very, very important, and we should support that, for our children. Because from this material intelligence will, from the spiritual intelligence, the material will come. Krishna guarantees that. Right? I mean, Dhruv Maharaj, all he had to do is touch him with the conch shell. What happened? Everything came to him, right? He didn't have to go to school and study all that. Opulence just came. He inherited the kingdom of his father. No problem. He didn't have to work. Hiranyakashipu worked so hard to establish his dynasty, right? He had to defeat the demigods. He had to go through austerities. Remember the austerities that Hiranyakashipu did? I mean, ants were crawling and he was just skeletons, right? Did Prahlad have to go through that austerity? No. So any austerity minus Krishna consciousness is just going to make one very hard-hearted, very merciless, right? In this way, we do austerities not for the purpose of raising a child who can be just materially successful in that. That is austerity without Krishna. And that's going to make the heart very hard. Our children's heart, how materialist, when you become a hardcore materialist, we become really hard, right? Because then we don't feel for the poor animals that we eat, right? We don't feel it. So when we raise our children just with sheer materialism, without and thinking that this is second, then that will make our hearts hard and the children's also. So spiritual, our prime duty in life is Krishna consciousness, and everything else follows. And believe me, Krishna, he carries what you lack, right? He preserves what you have and he carries what you lack. So guarantee Krishna is going to do that. I experienced that in my own life. We were just so busy. We had this temple and center. There was no time for anything, I didn't know. I actually didn't know what's going to happen to these children, because I had hardly any time left, for them, right? But they were all engaged with me, We were always doing things together. And Krishna somehow filled in the gap, the chairman of the English department comes along, takes my older one, and then I was wondering what's going to happen to the younger one. Is he going to follow suit? It's like, and then he also ended up, in the same university soon, So in other words, like there was one time that there was some big festival coming, and my husband said, everybody has to get in and get involved, and let's make a big success. And they were in college, and there was some big exam coming for my younger son, and he didn't know what he was going to do. He hadn't studied and all that. And then somebody sent him a kind of practice paper or something that was given some time ago. And he just did those practice questions or something, and verbatim that came in the exam. As it is. And that's the only thing he did. We've had some really amazing experiences like that. And Krishna does fill in the gap. So because growing up, especially in India, we are so concerned with this aspect in life, right? But we do have to take, we have to take care of their material needs, and they, like I said yesterday, make them responsible grahasthas eventually, But we should always have that balance, that perspective, the eternal perspective. Anyway, I'll stop here. It's getting late. Anybody has any questions or comments? Yes. So.
I'll just unmute it so that I can hear on Zoom as well. Thank you very much, Manaji, for the wonderful class. Manaji, just a couple of questions. I'll ask the first one first. Hi. Hare Krishna. Yeah. So, when you homeschool your children, what did you do when there was a certain topic that you didn't know? How did you teach them that topic?
Okay. Well, in a homeschooling environment, the children learn to do a lot of self-study because they cannot be spoon-fed, So they develop some good habits of self-learning. So in other words, when you give them the right tools in the beginning, make them strong in reading in English, and you make them strong in math, like that, then later on, as the things get beyond you, they're able to teach themselves really with some really good books. Like there's a math book that I used to use for homeschoolers. It's called the Spalding. I mean, it's like amazing book, right? You've seen that? You may be using it here also. I don't know, but so many practice. I mean, it's so many. The way they explain, the child can sit. I mean, I didn't have too much time for their math, so I would teach them the basics, and they would go through those practice things again and again. So yeah, so you can do that, or you can hire a tutor. I mean, you can always hire a tutor. In India, they just run children down, right? Those big bags they carry at the back, you know. I mean, there's so much, and they spend like 8 hours. They have no childhood over there, They have these 8 hours in school, and then the class teacher becomes their private tutor as well, right? And then you have to go right after you come back from school. You have to go to the house to get future tutoring, and then at least you're going to pass. Just like that, it's like so crazy. It's not healthy at all. I don't know what point I was making in that connection. I forget, but anyway, yeah. So yeah, to answer your question, right? You can do that. You can hire a tutor. I mean, you just take. I mean, to me, it's like going to school in India. Better you just do privately at home, because you take that. In that equation, you just, instead of going to school, you just hire a tutor, because in the after school you're going to take tutor anyway. So why even have that in the equation? Get rid of that. Just hire a tutor. What they go through, these kids in school, in terms of environment and the things that go on, right? So it's yeah, okay. So there's many ways you can do that, many ways you can do that.
Thank you. And my second question was, you mentioned yesterday that you spent around 2 hours a day with children, teaching them. Was that throughout the whole of their educational life, or was it at a certain time and in a teenage year you spent more time?
No, I mean, that was the first, when I was really like thinking what to do, should I homeschool or not homeschool. So I was strictly following the curriculum, the outside curriculum. So, they have their assignments, this is what you do. So I was just doing that. But then I got tired of that. I wanted my own curriculum. So I didn't follow that official curriculum after that, after summer. I didn't buy any more curriculum. I just taught from Srila Prabhupada's books. I just read Srimad Bhagavatam 2 hours a day with them. And we sat and we discussed, and we had so much fun. And if they get tired, you give them a little break. You see, in homeschooling, there's no bell ringing. Okay, time is over. Next, thing. You can do whatever you want to, right? Because it's, Prabhupada is saying it covers every subject matter. You can do 3 hours, 2 hours, if the children are inspired. And the discussion is such a format that you discuss, and it's very interesting. It becomes very interesting, right? And then they get to speak also. You're taking care of the vocabulary right there, communication, vocabulary. And then you can do words from the Bhagavatam. And when you learn like spelling words from the Bhagavatam by context, rather than giving a whole list of words, like 10 words, and checking with the dictionary, instead of doing that, you just read from Bhagavatam, They pick up meanings of words much easier. And of course, it's Bhagavatam, right? You ask them, through context, through the sentence that you're reading, they know what it means. And it's more fun way of teaching them many things. Yeah.
So biology and chemistry.
Yeah, they did that, but later on when they went to college. Yeah. I was thinking that maybe I should get a tutor, a science tutor for them. And it happened like a month or something. They went there, and then this college thing opened up. So they really didn't have much of that private tutor at all, So when they went to college, So that's why I emphasize these 5 R's a lot. Because when you actually make them really strong in language, comprehension, they can cover even science subjects, they can do that. And math takes care of all the physics and chemistry and all that. They were doing that for the first time. You see, Bhagavatam gives that training. It really sharpens your intellect. And then you're able to pick up anything you want to. Anything. They were doing things like Western psychology. And you know, Prabhupada said Bhagavatam, in the Bhagavatam, that you can understand, understand every psychological situation in the world. He said that. Everything is there. Suruchi's mentality, Suniti's mentality, right? Everything is there.
When you mean college, is that university in America?
Yes, university. It was.
So that is biology. I first started doing biology when I entered university.
Yeah, yeah. But we were doing a lot of like fun things one time. They learned a lot of geography just doing one competition. There was some competition locally where they were going to test something. So they just sat down for 1 month. They just did geography or 2 months. And they got like second place or something like that. So I would do things like that once in a while, a way of learning about the world, you know. And then we took a lot of hikes and nature trips, you know, and things like that, you know. Went to national parks or something. So they had their, that's another way. And travel is a great way of learning. We traveled a lot. We traveled a lot. We did Braj Mandal Parakram so many times. And you can't do that if you have school, regular school, right? It comes right in the middle. But if you are homeschooled, you just go anytime you want to, right? Every Kartik we would go and do this Braj Mandal, and it's a 1 month walk in Vraja. My son called it a devotional boot camp. I mean, it was so austere. I mean, you slept on the ground in a tent, you know, and just a tent, you know, and then you took water from a well in a bucket. We were rationed water, you know, 1 bucket per person, and you took it out of the well. One time, one sannyasi, he had a bucket of water. A cow came and drank all that. It was so funny, and at night they would all the children would do like impromptu plays, really nice devotional plays, you know, about Jagai Madhai and Ram Sita and things like that. It was a lot of fun. And then you walk around and imagine Krishna book became alive. I mean, you read about it, you go there, it becomes alive, everything, because you see Krishna's pastime everywhere, where what he did. And you'll be amazed, you know, Krishna book doesn't even cover those pastimes. There's so many, hundreds and hundreds of places where Krishna did different pastimes, and then they tell you about it, you know. Loknath Swami, he walked with us. In the early days, he was walking in every parikram, barefoot, you know. And then we were trying to wear, my children were trying to do it barefoot, and you can imagine what it did to the thorns and everything. It was a real nice experience. And in the evening, you try to, you know, the devotees helped each other, massaged each other. It was really amazing experience. So you take your children to something like that. So much education, right? Sometimes we think education is all about being behind a desk. That's not education, right? We think so, unless we sentence this child to 8 hours behind a desk, he cannot be educated. It's not true at all. So we have to change our perspective. And Krishna consciousness, you know, whatever Srila Prabhupada gave us, the process that he gave us, is the highest education. Imagine a person doing book distribution all his life. What kind of marketing guy he's going to be? Anywhere, right? Everything that he gave us is meant to, you know, help you in your material life. Yes.
Thank you, Mataji, for
Hi.
nice. two questions in one school together. My first question is when you homeschool kids, sometimes we know some kids they behave very nice. They discipline very well in front of their parents, and in school like they're very well disciplined. So as they come home, they have discipline, right? So how do you discipline your kids? Or when you homeschool kids, how do you them? And the second question is, because as a parent, I often get tired like this, even when kids are going to school, just doing all the household chores and taking care of them after school. But when you're homeschooling them, how do you manage to teach them homeschool them and at the same time took care of all the household activities like cooking, cleaning, so I'm just
Actually, homeschooling was, I think it's easier because, they are big assets, it's like, and it's not like you have to separate, okay, now is your time to cook and now is the time to do this, it's all combined. In other words, you're cooking while you're teaching, you teach them something and then they sit and do their work, right? So it's going on, effortlessly is going on. And then plus I had extra hands, like, they were helping a lot in the temple and center and housework and laundry and things like that, So actually it's not difficult to, I did get tired a lot, but at the same time, that was because we also were running a center. It wasn't just raising them, right? When you combine the two, it does get a lot. But then I could go and take a nap. So children understand. They're trained to understand that, mother needs a nap. It's not like an official school, It depends what kind of structure you want for it. You can have it a very structured one, okay, this is the time, this is your room, and here's the desk. You can do it like that, and many homeschoolers do that. And for people who feel, they are like that, they want a structured way of doing it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it didn't suit my lifestyle because I was running a center and my husband was at work and there were people coming and going, We had to do things right on the spot. And then we made it flexible. Okay, we didn't get to do this, so we do that. But one thing I always stuck to was the morning activity, the morning program and Srimad Bhagavatam. I tried never to change that. Yes.
Thanks so much. We're homeschooling as well. And
Oh, okay.
yeah. And I can talk to you about parents. When the word is well consumed. My question is about media literacy. So it's not that it's common now, but it's find it hard to maintain more time and sexual material comes personal. It becomes material. And you teach the kids that everything is personal.
Yeah.
How did you teach the kids to treat the teachers in university and college? Because when they do as everything, they should answer properly according to literalistically learning. So every time they ask me, I say like, okay, they're in fact it's not right. And but when you need to answer the question, you say this and that, and I can find this comfort, and it's like cheating. That is elementary.
When my children went to college, they were exposed to, they were doing mundane subjects, right, for the first time. I don't remember them facing that situation where you just like I mean, through the Bhagavatam, you're learning both the material and spiritual, and so they naturally know that this is going to be like that. I mean, like it could be a book on, Western philosophy, which could be completely impersonalistic. So you have to answer questions accordingly, right? But that's a whole school of thought, which is good to know, right? Because being trained, what it does, the material training, what it does is, the college training, because many people, somebody was asking about material. See, what it does is really gives the discipline. Like when you go to college and you go through years and years of, training and studying, it helps you in becoming mentally disciplined. It really does help. What to use it for preaching purposes. People who don't it really helps, that discipline, that mental discipline, of being, studying and being regular and being accountable, In fact, I heard in your party, when somebody wants to join, they insist that they finish their college, right? At Radhanath's temple, because they don't want, devotees to just leave everything and come. And then even after going to college, if they still feel that they should, be brahmacharis, then they accept them. Like they do some real testing, rigorous testing. That is not being done sentimentally. That really is a decision. It takes away that sentimental aspect, when you take things seriously. Not that I'm recommending that everybody go to college, okay? If we are not inclined towards that, then we shouldn't. I'm sure I heard Urmila Mataji is coming to give a series of classes related to what yeah. So maybe that will also help in how we need to follow our nature, who we are, in order to be happy.
My question is not as a parent, as a grandparent.
Mm-hmm.
Setting some guidelines for myself. My grandchild is only 3 months old. However, parents have their own way of bringing up their children. Whereas grandparents allow everything, they love and God knows for them. How do we balance these
Good
two?
question.
And I want to set some guidelines for myself.
Okay. Yeah, grandparents have a different kind of love, right, than the parents. But so the love is there, but in terms of making decisions for the children, how they should live and how they should behave, and for their future, it's very important that the parents take the step instead of the grandparents. Because in devotional life, we don't jump the parampara, we follow the parampara. Okay, so the parents are ultimately responsible for the children's, for decision making in terms of the future and even for the present. And grandparents should actually respect that. Okay, they have a very big role to play, the grandparents. And what happens is when we practice devotional service, then we can give that steadiness in the young family, that steadiness, in other words, that continuity of devotional service, having done that for such a long time, So there's a lot of wisdom to follow. But definitely we should not cross our boundaries. It's very important, because I see that struggle so much. And it really becomes hard when grandparents are not following devotional principles. Then it becomes especially very hard, right? However, we should always not, we should be very alert to giving them respect and doing, and being very courteous and respectful from our heart to them, because after all, they are superiors, right? It's not like we reject them or disrespect them. By that time, if detachment doesn't come, then it's really miserable, It's really miserable. That's why it's so important for us, not for only our children to practice devotional life, so that by the time our children fly the net, that we are ready to be detached. Okay.
Hare Krishna Mataji, there's a question online. You sort of covered this yesterday, but I'll ask it anyway. It says, thank you for your enlightening class. Every kid's being given phones to keep them occupied. What's the impact and how can this be overcome? Kids being given phones?
Yeah, I think I spoke a lot about that. Maybe she can
Yesterday,
hear a
yeah.
recording.
Maybe you can cover it in a brief.
Yeah, I already covered a lot about that already. I don't want to go through that again. Yeah? Okay. Anything else? Oh, yeah. Okay. Yes. Please.
You don't have any success stories like yourself, how you have brought up your children. Do you know of any other parents like that?
Oh,
Or
many parents.
children like that?
Yeah, there are many, many parents because I travel and I meet people. There's so many parents with such amazing kids, you know, and I especially can speak about those parents, especially who follow the Bhagavad method. Yeah. You see, amazing, and even among you know, like they just stand out, just like the children going to Hare Krishna school, they're going to stand out versus other children who are going to public school. It's just natural. So yeah, there's many, many. And one day I'm going to make videos of them. I just haven't gotten around to doing it. Like short excerpts of these wonderful parents.
And then the second question is that, many parents would not have that strong conviction as person to actually take up, and they would be a bit jittery doing that homeschooling. So, because outside world, they need that degree, that paper.
Yeah. Well, I think they're facing the same problem with the Hare Krishna school also. They get nervous and then they start putting them in public schools. And that's not really a good idea, you know, because especially those later years, the high school years are the toughest for children. And to try to take them out of school to put them in public high school, you know, we were running a restaurant, this one, you know, non-devotee, a young man he said, and he was a karmi, and he said, if I were to change anything in my life, it's those 4 years of high school. He was shaken up. And you're nodding, right? Yeah. You want to say something? Yeah. I mean, like you ask young people and they'll tell you. And why would you take them out of the Hare Krishna school and put them in public high school?
Because academically there are more children over there.
Okay, because there's very one or two and there's not enough.
More resources, and the Hare Krishna school has not many resources, so
Okay.
maybe they are not advancing that way.
Okay.
They're Hare Krishna school, but that school is more number, that the child will excel more exposure educationally.
Yeah, I personally still wouldn't do it for my child, in spite of that. The reason is because, you know, we think, like I said yesterday, we think that social, you know, having a lot of kids and being, you know, social, it means social, better being socially equipped, right? It's like I said, that doesn't have anything to do with being more socially equipped just by having more children. You know, because I mean, nowadays, even if you're with a group of friends, everybody's glued to their phone anyway. They're isolated. They're totally, you walk down the restaurant, down the airport, and you look left and right, there's restaurants, at least in America, everywhere. And there are people sitting on a table, like 4 or 5 of them. None of them are talking. They're all on their phone. They're not socially equipped. Yeah, I see.
And again, curriculum activities, basketball, just.
I think they're very weak arguments. Really. Because in terms of subjects, you can do everything privately. Doing high school privately is very popular in America also, because there's a lot of dropouts. By high school, kids just drop out. They don't want to study. They have no motivation to want to continue. So parents have to depend a lot on private education, and they sit down and do all that private. And also homeschoolers, the rich Christian families, they also, they didn't do what I did, somehow get them in college so early, right? So they go through proper high school and they all do privately. The big chunk of 3 million people in America who are homeschooled, they do high school privately, which means they're by themselves, maybe with another sibling or with a parent, and they're, working. But they have friends that they play around with, you see. I mean, it is statistically true in America that if they have like 3 candidates for their college, they will choose the one who's being homeschooled. It is a fact. If there's 3 people to choose from, they'll prefer that one. Because they know homeschool kids, they have better values, they have also better study skills, because they learn to study themselves. You see? So, if you do it privately, it doesn't mean that he's going to miss out on something. You can cover those subjects, you can still teach them those subjects. They can still learn those subjects that they are going to school for, they can learn at home. And imagine all the negative things they are picking up there. That's the problem. Until the heart is convinced that the environment is polluted, one will, we will always see we'll see things that are, better. And we don't think that this is really the main thing. The reason why I started homeschooling is because of the bad values. Because I was convinced, and so was my husband, okay, we don't want to give them those values, period. And so then everything had to fall in place. It had to fall in place, which meant that, okay, if this doesn't work, then this is how we're going to do it. We were prepared to hire a tutor. We didn't do it, but we were prepared to hire a tutor and everything, whatever makes it work, because we are convinced about this main thing. Right? Yeah. And Maya is so strong, and we just read about that, right? Maya is so strong that you may be raising a child as a devotee all the way through, but you send them to public high school and everything can go wrong. There was one family in Boise that I encouraged them to go to university early because our kids were going and everything. It became like a tradition around a temple, everybody's, the whole everybody at the university realized, okay, these are the Hare Krishna kids. They've got to be the smart kids. Let them in, like it was one after another, right? And then, so I told this parent, I said, your child is so brilliant. Just let him skip high school, okay? And let him just go to college. And they agreed. And he got a straight A in his first class. I don't remember what class yet. Then he got a straight. And then she pulled him out. I said, what happened? He was just going to be part-time, and then finally you get enough credits and you become a full-time student, right? It's so simple. And she pulled him out, and I said, what happened? Oh no, he's got to go to high school because he's going to miss out on something, because he's got to get to a good undergrad university. And guess what? A little while later, he went to high school and he found a nice girlfriend, a Karmi girlfriend, and brought her home. And here was a child who was coming to the temple with his parents. And then he's got a sibling who's going to follow in the same steps. Then you have younger, brothers and sisters who are going to watch this and do that. I don't want to scare or anything, but I'm saying that Maya is so strong. That should be our number one goal. And another thing that we are really afraid of is that they're too isolated. How do they experience material life? I tell you, they'll experience material life whether you like it or not. They'll experience, and let them experience through different other ways, like I said, in a protected way. Yeah, don't control them too much. Let them You know, I would invite their friends over to my house instead of them going to their house. That's another way. His Karmi friends or if somebody like my children were in college and they would invite all these college kids from the class to the temple. So you can work the other way, so they don't feel left out. You know, they still have friends. Anyway.
Thank you so much. I'm very enlivened by your example and the principles that you're teaching. I just wanted to make a point about this, that at the end of the day, parents have to be responsible. Like this is the purpose of this is the purport of this verse that you've chosen today. At the end of the day, the parents have to be responsible for doing all the best thing for their children in their Krishna consciousness. And one of the dangers when you have a Hare Krishna school is you think, oh, I just send them to that school and they'll do everything. And sometimes there's a danger that even a Hare Krishna school can go off track and put too much emphasis on the academics and not really do that Krishna consciousness. So whether they're going to Hare school, homeschooling or Hare Krishna school, never forget this responsibility. So just one point.
Very important point, and that's the point I told my host the other day also, you know, that ultimately, no matter what kind of educational system you choose, is the parents play the most important role. You cannot give up your own responsibilities of raising a child, your own efforts to make him a wonderful devotee. And studying Bhagavatam every day and giving him that conviction. Because there's all different types of devotees, right? And it becomes very confusing for the child, right? And Bhagavatam helps them to negotiate those differences in life by putting the thing that's most important on top. It gives you that discrimination power. Actually, devotee children who grow up reading Shastras, they're so much more accepting of the differences. Do you know that? It's just the other way around, you know. You have children going to school and they grow up without understanding diversity at all. Anyway.
And also, I just wanted to read an extract from a letter of Prabhupada, which I think reinforces exactly what you've been teaching us here in your example as well. This is a letter from Satswarup Maharaj, and this is what Prabhupada says. We should concentrate on training these children up in Christian consciousness, not so much by formal academic education, a little reading, writing, mathematics, that's all, but more by giving them facility to follow the examples of the older devotees in the regular Christian conscious program. This is your example exactly. Namely, rising early, arati, chanting, reading, street sankirtan, preaching, distributing literature like that. These children can be trained in that way by participating in all of these activities throughout the day, and always the focus of attention will be on Krishna. So you kindly see that these programs are carried out nicely. That is in the matter of our routine Krishna conscious program, and let the children learn in that way. Not much time should be wasted giving so much academic knowledge. A little reading and writing, that's all. And now this is the point to the last sentence. I think that's pretty cool. Let them be able to read our books very nicely, and that will be their higher education.
Mm-hmm. Very nice, Prabhu. Thank you so much for reading that. Beautiful, yeah. I mean, Prabhupada wanted children to read, they wanted to focus on English and Sanskrit. Because he knew English you need English language, strong language to understand anything, and Sanskrit would be to read his book, you know, to relish those books. So, yeah, that was really nice. Okay. Yes, Prabhu.
How does how do you impart the element of competitiveness side while home?
Mm-hmm. Well, competition is not really needed. because, and that's what's in society you see. I mean, the focus is competition, right? So they'll miss out in really getting, understanding the essence, really relishing something because you're so absorbed in competing with others. And that's the materialistic mentality. There's, there's no, I mean, spiritual realm, there's no, you're happy when somebody does better than you, right? That's the philosophy. Each gopi is happy when the other gopis has served Krishna even better, right? Radharani is so happy, like that. So this is our mode. I mean, we don't train them to compete. And I guess in India that would be really hard. My God, it's like cutthroat competition. This, yeah, 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 I know. Oh my God, really?
Hare Krishna Mataji, can you hear me? I'm an online audience.
Really. But the child is just like frustrated. I mean, you don't have any motivation to really know anything or study anything. No, there's something called NOIS. Yeah, National Open Institute for Schooling, NIOS. Many devotees are doing it in Chowpatty and other places as well. Yeah, I don't know exactly what they're doing, but yeah, devotees who are really concerned about schools in India, they are going for homeschooling. Yeah. Always, just like we did. No, that NIOS also gives official exams. Yeah, it's not every year, but it's like the first one is at 8th grade or earlier, then the second one is 10th grade, and the last one is like right before you go to college. Yeah, and they officially recognize those marks. In India, don't worry about India, you're not there, right? Yeah. But what I'm saying is over here in New Zealand, you have to see what's, how the universities, what is the mood of the universities in terms of, a child who's going to Hare Krishna school or being homeschooled, right? And I believe Hare Krishna school is well certified, right? So if you are dissatisfied with something that's going on in school, you just add it to your list at home. But you see, the overall safety is there, the protection is there. Yeah, see, yeah. What I'm saying is that I've heard, okay, this is not there, this is not there. Those little things, right? Then you just augment it, you do it at home, and you add it to that. But still, I mean, it's like it's so necessary, that school, right? Just to keep the children in a good environment, right? So anyway.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Hare Krishna. So, Mataji, I heard that your son went to university at the age of 16. 16, isn't it? Is that correct?
Oh, 12, 13.
Oh, 12, 13.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Like I explained everything yesterday. It was just accidental.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
just accidental.
So, if they were reading Bhagavatam 2 hours a day, every day, that was their formal academic, how did they have to give some exam to enter into the university? How did they?
Yeah. So every year, every year for homeschoolers, they have an exam that is voluntary. Nothing is required over there. But you just go and take that exam. It gives you an idea where they're at, because it'll tell you that, oh, they've done well. They really at the 6th grade level, like that. Every year you do that, and then you can you can at the university level you can do a placement exam. There's ways to get around it.
Thank you for that clarification.
Mm-hmm. And in New Zealand, you just have to find out how the universities here react to somebody, if you're homeschooling, how will they accept a homeschool child and how they, you can even have a transcript, right? In America, you can make your own transcript for your children. Like you can tell them that they've done so much and all that, and the universities accept that transcript. Anyway, there's a lot of things here. I'm sure there's something here too on that level. Is homeschooling very popular here in Auckland? No, it's not popular. Ah, really? They have no statistics on that?
Same example that had to be done as well. The structure of education in New Zealand is very, very good, very flexible. And of course, our Hare Krishna school has come a long way from what we had in the beginning to what it is now, and the resources that we are gathering now with technology, with outdoor education, with everything embedded in it, Shastra, our literacy, our maths, our numeracy, our social sciences, our sciences are all geared to integrating other subjects into it as well as Shastra.
Wow.
So in time to come, please be patient. The resources are going to grow, children are going to grow, and the children who are coming to our Hare Krishna school, as Mataji has also said, that these are not ordinary children. They have done such nice karma to be given this education in every classroom of ours. We start our day with a morning program. So the morning program, for example, in my classroom is children do all the paraphernalia. These are 7-year-old children. They bring the ashram cups, they prepare the gimmicks and the incense, and they go and collect the flowers. And two people, one is Pujari and one is assistant Pujari for the day.
Wow.
So
Amazing.
one will do the puja, and I'm there as a teacher to guide them how we do what we do in our procedures, the RC. And this is beginning of the term. By the end of year 3, when they are about 7.5, 8 years old, they will learn to do a full RT at that age. This is just an example, Mataji. So, want a strong morning program. And this also said that all the levels do the morning program. Apart from this, there's Shastra incorporated with math, science, English, everything that we do.
Really?
So yeah, it's
Prabhupada wanted all the subjects to be taught in a Krishna conscious manner.
And the ministry there is really, our school is an integrated special character school.
Wow.
So with that integrated special character school, we can use our curriculum with our Shastra the way we want. And the government is really wanting to see this things. This is set up as the old Catholic schools. When there were lots of Catholic schools, they were all run by the convents. But then what happened was they were not able to get that much resources and money and the funding. So then they said, okay, we are going to now send our children. This is the Catholic schools in New Zealand. They said, okay, now we're going to close because we are not able to do anything now. So then the government stepped in. There were about 20,000 children. And the government said, how are we going to put them into public schools? So then the government decided, okay, no. You hold on to the property. You hold on to the buildings. We will give you funding that your schools can go ahead with your special character and with the qualifications, the New Zealand Qualifications Authority, that gives them the script. So this is how the education system is in New Zealand. And
very nice.
They all can graduate to go to the universities.
Very good.
And in the hindsight, being good devotees, practicing Krishna consciousness.
Yeah. Sometimes we think that, thank you, Mataji, this was such a nice explanation of what's going on in school, just in case somebody doesn't know that, right? So thank you. But what was I going to say? It's about, what was I going to say? Sorry, that's bad. Oh. Yeah. Anyway, in Vrindavan Gurukul, they're using these books that we have. By the way, it's not my books. I'm not the author. It's a whole team. that's working on this book. So they use those books as their books for teaching English language officially, because Prabhupada said it's master's and PhD level, right? And there's so many things that are, all the activities are oriented towards language, because it's going to help you with the language, right? So again, there's many ways to teach, and integration, like you said, is very valuable. Prabhupada wanted all the subjects to be taught in a Krishna conscious way, rather than just from outside books. Because, I mean, Lord Chaitanya learned grammar like that, right?
Yeah. I remember.
Yeah, yeah. Every word was connected to Krishna.
I can give one example.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Harinam is the consonant, the vowel. So in Sanskrit, when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was teaching Sanskrit, and Jiva Goswami, he repeated this. So just very simply, they have vowels and consonants, right? And in Sanskrit, Visharga is the vowels, and consonants, and it starts with I. Yeah. So Jiva Goswami, he explains that actually the vowels are the Ishwaras. Because the vowels, they are independent. You can pronounce a vowel without requiring any consonant at all. It can exist on its own. E, like that, right?
Yeah.
Whereas the consonant cannot exist unless it's combined together with a vowel, the Ishwara. And so they're called the Vishnu Janas.
Oh,
The
really?
devotees. So the devotees that
Oh, yeah, dependent.
So
Yeah.
this is for example of Jiva Goswami and Lord Chaitanya's Sanskrit grammar.
Amazing. Amazing. Thank you, Prabhu. So nice. Yes, yes. You've been listening very carefully. I'm glad you're asking something or commenting. Okay.
So my question is very quite I guess. I'm just trying to understand more the difference between the morality and piety goal of life, because for example
today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So morality would be, to be simply, one can be moral without Krishna consciousness. There are many good people out there, So that's called morality, who are, who do the right things, who rather than the wrong things, they do the right things. They're good family people. They take care of their family. But the problem with just morality is that the mode of goodness, they are in the mode of goodness, right? The mode of goodness does not remain pure in material life. It's always tinged with passion and ignorance. Over time, immediately you'll see it happen. It cannot stay independently as goodness. But the pure goodness, which we are talking about, the transcendental level that Bhaktisiddhanta is talking about, as Thakur Maharaj, is Shuddha Sattva. And that is, somebody in Shuddha Sattva does not degrade to passion and ignorance. Okay? So anybody who's really a good person without Krishna consciousness, eventually they could fall down. Passion and goodness, you see?
Yes, and can a person be Krishna conscious without quality? Without money?
No, Krishna conscious means being connected to Krishna, and one automatically has all the good qualities. We don't artificially strive for those good qualities, but as we practice bhakti yoga, the good qualities come, And you see that in, the point that I was saying is that how mundane goodness doesn't last. It degrades, right, over time. You see that all the time. Somebody that people revere as being such a person of good character with some good morals, good family man. Immediately after some months, you'll see he's cheating on his wife or something's happened. It doesn't stay. That's why we want Krishna conscious role models for our children, for ourselves. And these models are, from the community, from Shastra, because Krishna is part of that picture. Okay? There used to be a very famous golf player in America, and all the advertising companies were grabbing him for their ads, because he was a man that everybody, all the children especially, looked up to. A man who exemplified, a good, how he's so faithful to his family, a good man, good in his sports, practice, all that. And then after some months, they found out that he was cheating for months with another girl. His wife left him, and all the ad companies said, forget it, we don't want you. So children especially growing up in that, when they see this, they become skeptical, They don't have any more faith in people who can actually be good, right? Or they try to emulate. Oh, he did it, I can do it too. You see, that's why he's against mundane morality. It's not good enough to keep us even in the mode of goodness. See? Okay, I think we are all hardly few people here now, so we'll stop. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I think there might be someone online that wants to ask verbally.
Okay.
Can I just ask?
Yeah.
Hare Krishna devotees, if there's anybody online that wants to ask Mataji a question, if they can unmute their mic and they can ask.
Yeah, Mataji, Hare Krishna. I have one question. Am I audible?
Just 1 minute, Prabhuji. I'll just put up the volume. Okay, go ahead, Prabhuji.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Mataji. Mataji, I was listening to your discourse. So I think I'm echoing. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. So my question is, Mataji, I'm actually currently in India. So basically, I've been given the daunting task of teaching one of the devotees' child the language of English. So I have taken a small assessment, in the sense that, I've given him to write a small thing, a small essay or a composition on something. And I found that he really needs some coaching in terms of grammar and the syntax alignment and stuff like that. So I'll be coaching him gradually, but I wanted to know that do I expose him to books written by English authors, because I've been grown up with that methodology. So is it okay to I'm a little confused because I'm not a professional teacher myself. So I wanted to know, how would what would be the right approach or the ideal approach in this case? I mean, do I expose them to, authors like, let's say like Sherlock Holmes stories, or, Enid Blyton stories, or do I teach him from Bhagavatam? Will that be the right approach? Or what would you suggest, Mataji?
Yes, Prabhu.
He's actually in standard 8.
Yeah. I mean, my answer would be to divert him to Prabhupada's books. You
Okay.
heard that how Prabhupada said by studying Bhagavatam, you can be masters and PhD. And many parents have had that experience. Many,
Okay.
many. So
Okay.
please divert him to Prabhupada's books. And you will be giving him not only immediate benefit, intermediate benefit, but eternal benefit. Yes,
Okay,
Prabhu?
but how do you explain the fact that maybe that's when he goes for higher studies and all, he'll be exposed to the outside world, the outside bad world, as I'd call it. So what does he do in that case? I mean, will that be sufficient only to have the Bhagavatam knowledge of Srila Prabhupada's books? Will that help, or do you think that some kind of a commercial knowledge is also required, material knowledge, as I'd call it?
Well, he's going to learn that commercial knowledge anyway, right? It's not like he's not going to learn that. He's
Yeah, but
going
these
to
are
go to
bad books
college.
any which ways,
I mean, this
Mataji.
is
Yeah,
one
I'm
subject
talking
I think you're talking about, right?
one
So
subject
his
primarily
exposure to
because,
the outside material will be there. But by giving this, like I said yesterday, that Bhagavatam has both this material and the spiritual. Prabhupada wrote the Krishna book, and much of the Krishna book is all about the nature of material world. And it's Krishna book. It's all about Leela of Krishna. Why? Because we cannot really understand anything spiritual until we understand the nature of this material world. It's very important to understand the nature of this material world in order to appreciate the spiritual, right? So Bhagavatam gives both.
Okay.
Much of the Bhagavatam is all about the nature of the. You just don't go and experience it. You experience it through the process of hearing. You see, and it's much more powerful. That child, believe me, by reading Bhagavatam, he's not going to be isolated.
Okay, point taken, Mataji. Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay? Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.